is Will Wightman. For my independent novel study, I read The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. It is a realistic fiction novel set in post-World War II America. Now, immediately we are introduced to our main character, Holden Caulfield, as he is expelled from his most recent in a long line of boarding schools, Penn University, for failing all classes except for one. Instead of going home to his parents, and his already stressed mother could not handle that, him getting expelled again, he decides to strike out on his own in the big city of New York. Now, immediately we note his rebellious tendencies. For one, he gets expelled, which, obviously, he failed all of his classes except for one and didn't show up, and all rebellious things like that. He also, on his first night out in the city, he checks into a dive hotel, goes to a club, or tries to order alcohol, and orders a prostitute. Now, throughout the story, his drinking, sex addiction, all of his bad tendencies, they lead him to trouble. Like with the prostitute's pimp comes around and tries to rough him up. He gets caught at a couple bars, and it's just not fun for Holden. Throughout the book, Holden, he talks about his mental illness. He talks about his depression and how everything around him makes him sad, and how it affects him, and how everyone around him is phony. Now, J.D. Salinger, the author of this book, he was willing to talk about mental illness in a time when it was hands-off, an issue that no one talked about, which I thought was a good job for him. He also discusses the work hard versus work smart ethic, kind of. He talks about how if a man goes to school for years, he's just going to end up being behind some desk, wasting his life away, versus working hard where he would be able to live his life, make money, earn a living, instead of just sitting behind a desk and dying away. And he also reflects a lot on himself and how he can better himself. And through doing that, the reader of this story is able to also reflect on themselves. I know when I read it, it brought a few interesting questions to mind, questions that I don't normally think about. Like, I don't face many of the issues that the character Holden in this book does, but he brought them to mind and brought some issues to light. One thing that I just was not able to get past from page 1, that it annoyed me throughout the whole book, was the writing style and the grammar within. The writing style almost makes you question whether or not the author had a full education. It's very basic. The structures of the sentences are very crude, and it's hard to get into from the beginning. Now, if I had to give a rating on this book, out of 5 stars, I would give it a 3.5. It talks about a lot of issues that a lot of people don't want to talk about, which is the main reason why I'm giving it a 3.5, a higher score. However, the grammar and the sentence structure and the way he writes the story just throws you off, and it's hard to get into from the beginning. His voice is very clear throughout the whole story, but I don't like this type of voice. I personally don't like this voice. I would recommend that people read this book, though I would recommend it begrudgingly. I didn't really enjoy this book, but it did bring some questions to mind, which I think people need to have questions in life. And for that, it was good. And that concludes my summary of The Catcher in the Rye.